good evening once again, and welcome to the Arbiter's Go to the Movies, a special side project of Arbitration Studios. I'm your host, JP Arbiter.
I'm Mrs. Arbiter.
And Mrs. Arbiter, what movie are we going to be talking about today?
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. We specifically I guess we have to specify now, the 1987 meant to be theatrical release, but never was. We'll get into that a little bit more later on as we go through our plot summary. So, G.I. Joe, if you've seen the toys that made us, G.I. Joe has existed since post-World War II America. That's kind of the short version of it. But the incarnation that this movie is based on and the television show it's based on is straight out of the 1980s. Straight out of the Reagan era, aggressive militarism, oorah kind of attitude.
That's a way to describe it.
Being about as kind as possible to the whole thing. So, and again, if you haven't seen The Toys That Made Us, I highly recommend seeing that on Netflix. Their G.I. Joe episode that shows the whole history of it, particularly once they reached the 1980s version, which was bringing G.I. Joe back to this little-known toy company from New Hampshire called Hasbro. It just shows how batshit crazy the process of toy making was for that. So
it was crazy, but kind of neat to hear about.
So anyway, Mrs. Arbiter, were you a big G.I. Joe fan?
Not really, but I wasn't a big fan of much of anything growing up. It was generally whatever was at the dollar store at the time.
The funny thing is, for me, is that I didn't much care for G.I. Joe in its original incarnation, or we'll throw original in air quotes. In its beginning incarnation, when it was produced in the, I think it was Sunbow, who was the first production company that did the cartoon, and then Dick took over after the, Deke. We all think it, kids. Deke took over after the production of this movie. And that was the incarnation I enjoyed more because I don't know, it was even, I guess I was more of a sucker, I guess. I don't know. Plus they had the character Metalhead, and Metalhead was hilarious. Voiced by Gary Chalk, the man who voiced Optimus Primal. So,
neat. And
played that Russian general in Stargate SG-1. So before we get into this movie, let's talk about the live action movies real quick, because we saw that in the theater together. And
at least the first one.
Yeah.
The second one, nope.
Nope, I'll nope with the side of nope. I'll defend the first one for embracing the ham and the cheese. It was a ham and cheese sandwich.
A ham and cheese Joe?
that was practically straight out of the 80s cartoon. The only thing that was out of place were those exoskeletons at about the halfway point.
Yeah, those were just weird.
And from what I understand, that was part of, like, one of the two co-directors had a passion project and he just wanted to commit it. Like the script, like, the movie was in pre-production and then it fell through. And so he's like, well, I've got these, integrate them into G.I. Joe. So, but I will defend it. I will not say it was a good film, but I will say it was a fun film. And, of course, what happened when Dennis Quaid spoke in that movie? When he said, knowing is half the battle?
Everyone repeated that in the theater.
The entire theater was, It wasn't the Barry Woods AMC, it was the one in Independence.
Yeah.
That we went to. But yeah, the entire theater went, G.I. Joe! So it was just a hoot. Just a hoot. But that's sort of that kind of an abbreviated little bit of our background on this, because this was more me that was familiar with the background than you. So shall we get into the movie?
Yes.
All right.
So.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
It's New York, 1987, at some celebratory event. Perhaps Yankees won the series or something. As fireworks and balloons erupt over Ellis Island. Using the celebration as cover, a flying vehicle hovers over Lady Liberty, disgorging paratroopers crying out, Cobra!
Cobra! That was like the worst game of Marco Polo ever. And how do you do that when you're parachuting down? She just mouthed Cobra silently. Anyway, because yeah, you can't hear shit. Mythbusters covered that.
Yeah, I think Shazam has said that just right. Wait,
What?
Are you giving a really big speech? Because I can't hear you. You're like a mile away.
Anyway.
As they land, the Cobra troops go about wrecking Ellis Island for reasons that are not perfectly clear. Civilians are running, TV cameras are getting smashed. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Panic is spreading far and wide. Who can turn the tide? Then Major Blood, yeah, those are kind of cool names, is shot down from his rocket glider. We then see G.I. Joe's field commander, Duke, standing on Lady Liberty's torch, shouting out, Yo, Joe! What then follows can only be described as 3 glorious minutes of the most aggressive American rendition of what a child sees when smashing his action figures together, when we see such things as Heavy Duty blowing up a BAT robot soldier, an entire squadron of VTOLs that Cobra did not see take off. Recondo leading a squad of other notable members like Barbecue and Spirit in a charge. Barbecue and Spirit.
Spirit was a Native American shaman, and Barbecue was a incendiary trooper or firefighting specialist. He dealt with fire, okay?
Apparently he could handle his grill.
Yeah. Love these names, don't you?
They're everywhere. Destro handing Cobra Commander a bomb to detonate in 5 minutes from when he handed it off. Cobra Commander places the bomb at the base of Lady Liberty. Snake Eyes grabbing a Cobra pod and forcing it into a backflip. Cobra pod?
That's what they are called, like.
I know. You think
like the box actually says Cobra Flight Pod, and then the beautiful thing is that in parentheses, Trouble Bubble, but trouble is spelled Trubble.
Oh my!
Because bubble is spelled that way. Anyway.
Oh. Ejecting the pilot and commandeering it. Alpine doing a Tarzan swing, kicking 2 Cobras off Lady Liberty, shooting a grappling gun at the tail wing of a plane, punching that plane to death.
Punching?
How?
You saw the movie? He punched clean through the armored canopy of an aircraft.
Point.
How is that not punching a plane to death?
He Captain America did. Got it.
Yes.
Then grappling the pod that Snake Eyes commandeered.
Which just shows that Alpine is quite possibly the strongest member of G.I. Joe, because the sheer amount of G-forces exerted on his shoulder joints. By all rights, he shouldn't have arms.
Yeah. Duke punches Cobra Commander off Lady Liberty.
As he should.
Scarlet performs a jetpack-assisted punch on Torch.
As she should.
Bazooka falls over, misfiring his bazooka, and almost kills Shipwreck, who looks back. Dude, what the fuck?
Sir. Anyway, continue.
Eventually, Duke stops kicking ass long enough to grab the bomb Cobra planted with 10 seconds to spare. 13 seconds later, he plants it on Cobra's airship. Wait, 3 seconds difference? Never mind.
No, it works. It works.
Okay.
The bomb has 10 seconds to spare, and 13 seconds later, he plants it, bails out, and it blows up.
Okay. And destroys it. Wins the day for Joe's and for America for freedom.
So, Mrs. Arbiter, what did you think of G.I. Joe the movie?
It starts now, though, right?
Wait, what? Oh, yeah, there's everything else after this.
Yeah, that's just the intro.
Seriously, what if Transformers had started off with something this epic?
I don't know.
I gotta be honest, sometimes when I need a perk up, I still go to YouTube to watch this 3-minute thing. Continue, please.
There's a reason for it. Deep in the middle of nowhere between the Deke and Sunbow eras, we are shown Cobra's Terradome as the routine night patrol commences. Meanwhile, inside events are not so routine, as Serpentor, the genetically engineered leader of Cobra, is berating his subordinates for being the bad guys in a 1980s children's cartoon. Cobra Commander takes exception to being relegated to comic relief in the second season. Calling upon Cobra's officers for support, he is instead berated by Destro, Mindbender, Tomax, Zammot, Baroness. Cobra Commander takes it well.
Unsubstantiated fantasy! Lies! Lies! Lies!
Outside, however, monster from Cthulhu mythos emerges from the swamps, disgorging a cloaked figure who is able to infiltrate Cobra Command with ease, utilizing a wide variety of biological contraptions. Cobra Commander gathers the remaining leadership in charge against the figure, despite Serpentor's desire to face this would-be assassin.
Something I gotta point out, because I love the little guys in this. This is the first time I can think of in G.I. Joe where we are shown non-combatant support personnel for Cobra. And I'm talking uniformed people who are working on maintaining vehicles and have nothing to defend themselves from this would-be assassin other than like their wrenches and stuff. So, hey, yay for Cobra Enlisted.
Evading even the elite Crimson Guard of Cobra and being allowed to pass by Cobra Command, the cloaked figure beats every security measure and faces Serpentor just before his panic room locks down. After an acid flashback, we are now introduced to Pythona, who states memories of her were implanted in Serpentor's very soul before showing him the MacGuffin of our movie, the Broadcast Energy Transmitter, or BET. Deep in the Himalayan mountains, G.I. Joe is setting up the BET for testing. No explanation is given for why an American Special Ops group is testing in Chinese claimed territory, or why this device is a military project to begin with. After a dial tone and mainframe insert the last circuit board, Duke fires the BET up, treating the audience to a seizure-inducing yellow light show and causing G.I. Joe equipment to fire on its own and operate without user input. This is particularly troublesome for Cross Country as his Havoc begins rolling away from Joe's staging area. Cross Country chases the vehicle over the crest of the hill, saying, "Stop, stop, stop!" only to run back over the crest, saying, "Go, go, go!" as attacks Joe's position.
That's so Tom and Jerry. No! Oh my God! Run away! Run away! Run away! Han Solo kind of thing.
Let me out like that! Let me in! Having successfully gotten the drop on G.I. Joe, most of their armored vehicles are destroyed or damaged, with only 2 being operated by Snowjob and Roadblock being able to fight.
Two things. First off, yes, his name is Snow Job. I love these names. I should also point out, for those G.I. Joe toy enthusiasts, that both G.I. Joe and Cobra, at this point, had toys that were dedicated Arctic and mountain fighting vehicles. Alright? They had them. The Havoc tank, which for some reason has missiles facing backwards, and these motorcycles and trikes are not them. So who the hell organized the motor pool for either side needs to be fired. Anyway, continue.
The fight is only going marginally well for Cobra, however, as Cobra Commander points out to Serpentor, who brushes him off with his usual contempt. Realizing how perilous their position is, Duke moves to the BT in hope of using it as a makeshift weapon. This leads to a brawl with Serpentor on the command deck of the BT. Snakes are thrown like javelins, punches landed, and eventually Serpentor is thrown against a parabolic antenna charged with energy, knocking him out.
Complete with when he lands, smoke coming up. I love that little cartoon effect that says that where it's like when you see that, you know this person was just electrocuted.
I know. It's like the circles when a Pokemon's confused. Seeing the Cobra Emperor has been apprehended and the battle lost, Cobra Commander calls for general retreat. A long march in high altitude nearly does all the survivors of Cobra in, but eventually they reach a location born out of H.R. Giger's wet dream. Cobra has no time to rest his roadblock, and the entirety of figure waves 1 and 2 are hot on their tail, or they would have been before whooping and hollering maniacs with giant machetes and a gargoyle's reject saves them.
It's at this point this movie starts to take a turn for the weird.
Indeed. Cobra Commander celebrates his rescue and walks up to the winged giant only to be slapped back to the snow.
No. The back of the hand. Send him to school.
Pythona strongly implies Cobra Commander has some explaining to do, and the massive character named Nemesis Enforcer apprehends Cobra Commander and escorts the rest of Cobra and the Joe prisoners further into the grove. Sometime later at Joe HQ, General Hawk is being briefed on Roadblock's team being overdue, and Flint is assigned for search and rescue and takes Figure Wave 3 with him. Pivoting from there, Duke informs General Hawk that Beachhead had begun training half a dozen new recruits. Here we are introduced to Big Lob, Tunnel Rat, Law, Jinx, Chuckles, and absent Lieutenant Falcon. We are introduced to several training scenes. First, Tunnel Rat and Big Lob maneuvering through a literal hazard course, as flamethrowers, electrified fences, and minefields all stand in the way of a goal. When they engage, we are shown both Tunnel Rat's affinity for enclosed spaces and Lob's athleticism.
Both in terms of physical feats as well as commentary, I might add.
Chuckles at the tank range displays an incredible feat of strength after his tank misfires. He decides to abandon his vehicle, rip off an anti-tank rifle from its flanks, run at full speed with the rocket, chuck it overhead at a captured Hiss tank 20 yards away, destroying it.
Next time, use the rocket launcher. And I should point out, Chuckles never speaks in this movie. His name is Chuckles.
Strong but silent type.
But why is he called Chuckles?
We don't know that yet.
We never know. You only know if you read the comic books.
Apparently so. Then we are shown the Latino MP Law and his police dog Order engage in explosive ordnance disposal. Beachhead berates Law for not engaging the training himself, even though it was precisely what he did as an MP. Order finds the bomb and brings it back to Beachhead, who is clearly panicking, throws the device away, only for Order to bring it back. Law claims the bomb from his canine companion, chucks it away where it detonates at full force in midair.
I have questions.
You do.
First off, Beachhead had to have known that Order was a thing. As a responsible drill instructor, he should have known that Law's specialist was as a canine law enforcement officer. Secondly, dogs are used all the time in EOD jobs, at least for police, which
True.
again, as a military policeman, this qualifies. Thirdly, why on God's green earth are they using live explosives for training? Jesus, tap dancing reindeer games, my dude, do you want to get everyone killed? The hazard course for Big Lub and Tunnel Rat was bad enough. I remember as a kid crapping my pants looking at it like, holy crap, are you trying to get them killed?
Finally, in the martial arts dojo, Jinx, G.I. Joe's 7th ninja character, is sparring against Beachhead, getting her ass whooped. She insists on a rematch while blindfolding herself. She reveals that she was trained by the Arishikage's blind master, and easily wins round 2.
I admit that when I wrote the script, I inferred that the blind master trained her, but the Arishikage are known for having a blind master. It's one of their 6 masters. So
Finally, we catch up to the former Green Beret Lieutenant Falcon,
voiced, by the way, by Don Johnson.
shrieking duty and showing a Southern Belle date around the prison where Serpentor is being held. Of course he is. After showing off the laser-proof walls, Duke enters the facility.
Almost taking a laser to the face.
And rightly busts Falcon's balls for bringing a civilian with a camera into a military prison.
Anyone, even as a kid, I knew Falcon deserved the ass chewing that he got. It was absolutely insane. And this is our hero for this movie, Lieutenant Falcon, by the way. Who we show him slacking off, jacking around, and risking G.I. Joe base security. And I comprehended this as a 7-year-old. This guy sucks. This guy really sucks.
Some hero, right?
Some hero.
Old Southern what's-her-name drives off until reaching a body of water, strips down to a swimsuit until she's accosted by Dreadnought Thrasher.
It is at this point that, one, I should realize that even as a 7-year-old, I was like, ooh, a swimsuit. And I knew that what Thrasher was doing was wrong. Cosplay is not consent, kids.
A solid whooping later, we learn that the Southern Belle is actually Zarna, a fellow dreadnought and sister to the leader, Zartan. She reports her reconnaissance to Serpentor's holding facility. The dreadnoughts are joined by Pythona and Nemesis Enforcer as they plan to raid and liberate Serpentor. Later that night, Falcon approaches Jinx in the motor pool and commits a Section 120.
Uniform Code of Military Justice for sexual harassment and assault.
No, Joey. When Jinx objects to Falcon shirking his duties, we see him describing the impossibility of Cobra springing Serpentor at the exact time the dreadnoughts spring Serpentor.
Doing the exact same thing the entire time. A faked ID bracelet away past a plexiglass shield, blowing up concrete, which isn't that hard, and plowing through his guards. The laser grid was the hardest thing, and that was because Nemesis Enforcer's wings are made of pure bullshit. The thing is that Falcon should not have shirked his duties, but Falcon's chain of command actually fucked up here. Protocol for guard duty is that there has to be at least 2 people at any given station, Now you might argue, well, there were 2 people, but one of them was in there guarding Serpentor. No, those are 2 separate checkpoints.
2 per
Where
checkpoint.
Where was Falcon's partner? Where was his backup? Who could have stopped him before he went off to play slap ass on Jinx in the motor pool? No. Falcon fucked up, but G.I. Joe really fucked up. I should also point out that G.I. Joe, for having their most secure prison facility, really poorly maintains it if the alarm wire was busted before that bomb went off. Now, it's quite possible that the bomb damaged it, but why do you need the wire to be in such a vulnerable place as well? Why is the alarm system even tied to it? And why is it not on a collapsible circuit so that way it goes off if the wires are cut?
All very good questions.
Yeah. But Falcon sucks.
Running back to his post in the aftermath, he sees General Hawk overlooking Heavy Duty, Bazooka, and Alpine being carted off to the infirmary, and gives Falcon a fully justified ass-chewing. Some indeterminate time later, Generals Hawk, Flag, Hounsworth, and Rear Admiral Ledger inform Falcon that he is hot rod levels of suck. Appealing to generals, we learn from Duke that he is Lieutenant Falcon's older brother, but believes that Falcon has potential to not suck. Falcon is assigned to retrain at a facility called the Slaughterhouse. At the same time, in Cobra La, Serpentor is given the red crustacean carpet treatment, as he is introduced to
Golobulus, who is voiced by the Penguin himself, Burgess Goddamn Meredith, and does so with a glee and a hammy demeanor that is a sight to behold.
We learn that Serpentor was created, albeit indirectly, by Cobra Law, to put their schemes into action. Cobra Commander is put on trial for the crime of sucking like Hot Rod. One of the dreadnoughts asks what the point is. They should just waste him and be done with it. But Golobulus insists that every crime is due a fair trial. He then replaces the trial with a massive exposition dump about the history of Cobra Law and Cobra Commander himself. At that point, the trial ends, I guess, and judgment is soon passed down. Cobra Commander is found guilty and exposed to the same biological weapon that Golobulus is launching into space to use on the rest of the world. He only needs a BET in order to incubate the weapons in orbit.
Thank you. Funny thing happens here. Golobulus is very intent on having Cobra Commander, as the spores are taking their effect, just being chucked down a ravine. You know, hey, you get to experience the pain of your life's work before you die. It's great. But then Serpentor's like, no, throw him in the cell with the Joes so they can see what will befall mankind. And what does Golobulus say? That's a touch melodramatic. Throwing him off a cliff after subjecting him to a horrible mutagen is not melodramatic?
I find that hard to believe.
Now, don't get me wrong. Forcing him to writhe in pain until the mutations he's undergoing fully take effect, and having other prisoners of war witness it, that is melodramatic. It's melodramatic as hell.
Yeah.
But Golobulus's original plan is not? Whatever. Continue, please.
Back in U.S. territory, Wild Bill drops...
Literally.
Lieutenant Falcon off Slaughterhouse's designated LZ for new recruits. On the ground, he encounters a threesome of massive, muscle-bound tough guys, being led by the one and only Sergeant Goddamn Slaughter himself.
I've been expecting you.
My name is Sergeant Slaughter, Special Drill Instructor for G.I. Joe. You're going nowhere, Space Case. You're here because you're an industrial straight follow-up. My job is to whip you into shape, and I'm talking whip. There's only 2 ways out of my command. On your feet like a man, or in a ditty bag. An itty-bitty ditty bag. Got it?
Yes, sir!
We are then introduced to Slaughter's renegades. Mercer, a former Cobra Crimson Guardsman. Red Dog, a roid rage football player who likes to eat his wooden baton. And Tauros, the third one. After introductions are made, Slaughter and the renegades take off, and Lieutenant Falcon is ordered to run after them for what is implied to be a long trip. Back in Cobra Law, a rapidly mutating Cobra commander is being dumped in the same cell as Roadblock's group is in. After the insertion of a stag beetle key, Quick Kick and Snake Eyes ambush the Cobra Law guards, and the rest of the team bust out, overcoming the rest of their jailers despite being unarmed. After being spotted by Serpentor, he attempts to order them recaptured. Globulus tells Serpentor to hold his beer. He's got this one.
Question: Why was Snake Eyes allowed to retain his armor, including his visor?
Good question.
Because you would think that you wouldn't given the parahuman nature of the Denzians of Cobra Law, I'm surprised that, granted, this is a G-rated cartoon, but strip them down to nothingness, remove the filthy human trappings their skin is covered by, or some weird shit. But I guess G-rated, we want to be able to know who people are.
Roadblock is held up by Cobra Commander while waves 1 and 2 are regulated to the clearance bin by means of a tentacle plant traps.
Ooh, tentacles!
Nemesis Enforcer is sent after the remaining escapees using a spore plant to blind Roadblock. Despite the blindness, he seems capable enough, picking up Cobra Commander and running until falling into a river, where we learn those spores are not water-soluble. Satisfied that they will not survive the freezing water, Nemesis Enforcer returns to Serpentor's side to oversee the recovery of the BET. Roadblock and Cobra Commander hear the launching of more spore weapons. Back at the slaughterhouse, Falcon makes it in as Sergeant Slaughter and the Renegades finish a nice breakfast of barbecue ribs before beginning their morning exercise, complete with more dressing down from the Sarge. That the Renegades are invested in Falcon's success. After Red Dog helps Falcon with pull-ups, while doing one-armed pull-ups himself. Given that they're the closest unit to the Pterodome, however, the Duke assigns Sergeant Slaughter to infiltrate it and gather intel on Cobra's movements. When told to think of it as a training exercise, Falcon has to show that he still sucks by suggesting to go in unarmed, just to style and profile on Cobra. A plan Sarge likes, while the rest of the Renegades growl at Falcon because he still sucks. Elsewhere, the BET is remitted to storage in a civilian facility, but one of the transfer crew happens to be the Baroness in disguise. As she reaches the Pterodome to report on the BET's location, the Renegades arrive and pull a die-hard, infiltrating the base through the air ducts. Hearing Cobra's next move, Sergeant Slaughter and the Renegades move on Cobra's armory, grabbing some weapons and setting a bomb.
Well, I guess shit just got real, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, because Falcon sucks, he gets to go call for help. Stealth doesn't last long, though, as a team of troopers pins down the Renegades, while Tomax and Zammot discover Falcon.
Okay, first off, I love the fact that no one is at fault here for getting caught. Because it happens kind of simultaneously. Also, I'm not an expert in G.I. Joe toys by any stretch of the imagination. I only had a handful of them. But what the fuck was that big mech suit that blew open the door? There's like this big ass mech suit with a Mega Man style arm cannon that's escorting Tomax and Xamot and a bunch of Cobra guards. I don't think I've ever seen that as a toy. And I have no research on this. Every time I type in G.I. Joe mech suit, I'm introduced to the G.I. Joe astronaut, whose name I can't remember right now. because he's not in this movie. Because he sucks worse than Lieutenant Falcon. I mean, it's lonely up there in space. You're like Cosmos, okay? You're useless. At least Falcon and Hot Rod suck. So, but that's something that bothers me, though. So, we also don't see what happens when the Renegades escape, though. It's just there's an explosion and they run out.
Pretty much. Realizing Falcon was left behind, Sergeant Slaughter orders the Renegades back into the Terradome.
By the way, displaying impressive amounts of marksmanship skills as Red Dog fires a handgun at 3 different vehicles, blowing them all to Kingdom Come. And Sergeant Slaughter, not to be outdone, does this himself against one more vehicle.
Okay, then.
What the hell are those guns packing? Why isn't Cobra using these things on a regular basis?
Who knows?
It's like the Noisy Cricket before the Noisy Cricket was a thing.
Fair enough. They discover Falcon was brought here before Serpentor, who is in the middle of telling them how much he sucks. Sergeant Slaughter delivers a threat worthy of the former WWE champion.
When I'm through, Scuzzbucket, they're gonna scrape you off the walls with a squeegee.
Before Nemesis Enforcer latches a facehugger on him, Serpentor screams like a little girl when shot at and forces Nemesis Enforcer to protect him.
Forces Nemesis Enforcer. In hindsight, that was not the best way to write that. Sergeant Slaughter's trying to pull off a facehugger, and then the Renegades start shooting Serpentor, and he screams like a little girl, and Nemesis Enforcer's like, "Oh crap! I must protect my Emperor with my wings made of bullshit."
Allowing the Renegades a chance to escape.
It's at this point the movie goes from weird to nuts. Just a little nuts. But what happens here is a case study in pacing gone awry. I think that's the best way to put it. Because it's just like the rest of the movie is just 3 back-to-back action sequences. So things are gonna get a little nuts, kids. Buckle up.
Buckle up, enjoy the ride. All of Cobra make an assault on G.I. Joe's base. Duke commandeers a demolisher tank, while General Hawk commands a wing of Conquest jets. Not wanting to be left out of the action, the newest wave of rawhides commandeer an Eagle Hawk helicopter.
For G.I. Joe vehicle names sometimes verge on the redundant.
Yes. Even though it has been manually started by Chuckles.
Who, by the way, after he manually throws both the rotor and counter rotor of this helicopter, continues to hang on directly underneath the rotors to the top of the helicopter for dear life. Chuckles should be pate before this thing even takes off.
Should. Thanks to the marksmanship of Tunnel Rat, Law, and Chuckles,
Firing a handgun still underneath the rotors on the top of the helicopter's hull.
the Rawhides managed to down a few of Cobra Law's biological aircraft. Just as General Hawk is rallying G.I. Joe, Serpentor strikes with his squad of Night Ravens, and the most hilarious battle cry ever.
Cobra! La, 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 la.
While on the ground, the Dune Worms burst forth and clear the way for the BET.
Because the spice must flow.
Yes.
I did mention this movie starts to get a little nuts, right?
Yep. Serpentor lands to take possession of his prize when Sergeant Slaughter and the Renegades arrive to the party, destroying Serpentor's plane.
And he does the Cobra la 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 thing again. It's great.
Lieutenant Falcon ends up at the mercy of Serpentor, only for Duke to save him in the last-minute tackle. Not to be deterred, Serpentor readies a spear, aka a snake, and throws it at Falcon. Duke cries out as he sucks too much to be killed off in this movie and jumps in front of Serpentor's long, hard, dark python, taking it straight to the heart.
Oh yeah.
Serpentor gloats while retreating with his prize, and the Joes regroup. Gasping through the wound, Duke extols his brother not to suck so hard before dying in his beloved Scarlet's arms. It wasn't a thing. It was nothing. He was just a friend.
Oh no, they were banging.
No, I'm talking about Serpentor. Come on. Hawk briefly comforts Falcon before turning around and through manly tears chokes out "Man down." A real American hero falls, relegated to the clearance bin.
No.
But
No.
No.
Here. No. Shush. Quiet you.
But
It's no secret at this point. G.I. Joe the movie and Transformers the movie were put into production simultaneously, but animation delays from Toei kind of ended up with G.I. Joe on the back burner for a little bit. And so, whereas when G.I. Joe the movie was supposed to hit theaters first, but missed its deadline, Transformers the movie came out first. And so kids got to witness the death of Optimus Prime. And it devastated an entire generation. As we covered in our last bit. The reaction to this was so strong. What we described here was how it was originally written in the script. Okay?
okay.
It right down to General Hawk through his manly tears crying out "Man down." But because of the reaction to Optimus Prime's death being so horrible and Hot Rod sucking so hard, they crammed in at the last possible minute in a moment that didn't need any lips to be animated. Scarlet just saying, "He's fallen into a coma." Nope. And Hasbro lost its testicles. Seriously. Commit. Fucking commit. It just... And then at the end of the movie, when no one... Over a radio call, so again, no one is animated into it. They say, Duke's gonna be okay! Yay! What the fucking hell? There was a moment for real emotional impact here. But because there was real emotional... But because kids found real emotional impact with Optimus Prime, parents felt the need to protect them. All of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Duke's not dead. You're wrong.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Back at Cobra La,
Cobra la 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 la.
I want that as a ringtone.
Serpentor shows up with the BET, and Golobulus wastes no time putting it to use, incubating the orbiting spores. But how is he incubating spores that are in orbit?
That's what the BET is for. It broadcasts energy through space, and that energy is that free energy is incubating the spores.
Okay.
So
It's weird, but whatever. Golobulus then displays a time worm, which acts as a timer for the weapons.
questions. I have questions. First off, I do appreciate that they waste no time. It's, hey, I got the BET. Cool, fire it up! no, like, designated time or place. It was, all right, we got this. Let's do it. Boop. Shouldn't we plug it in, read the instruction manual? Big red button. Boop. Boop. Time worm. So, question. First off, watch. I mean, because the implication is that when the time worm completes its journey up this spike thing, that's when the things will launch. Okay, so are the spores dependent on the worm making it up? Because have you played with a caterpillar as a kid, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of do their own thing, right?
Yeah.
So while it may be intent on following the groove, it might crawl back down. It might fall off. It might, just stay there for a while.
I think the implication was it's psychically linked to them or something.
Point is that a caterpillar on a staghorn or whatever is a piss poor timer.
Fair enough. That BET, however, is about as subtle as a chainsaw in church, and the dial tone is able to pinpoint its exact location. Falcon readies a 12 gauge for an old-fashioned St. Louis-style ass-whooping.
St. Louis style because he and his brother are from St. Louis, Missouri.
Yay! Beachhead informs him that his wave isn't due out until after the movie reaches theaters.
Never does. This movie goes direct to video because of what happened with Transformers the movie.
And General Hawk orders figure waves 4 and 5 after the BET, leading the charge personally.
And Falcon sucks anyway.
Meanwhile, Cobra Commanders seems to have lost all sense, while Roadblock barely survives the frigid, low-oxygen environment. Their fight sends them down a hill right into Flint's rescue team. Realizing the danger, Hawk's forces in. Roadblock's radios to warn them about the perimeter plants, but is just too late. Realizing there are not any figure waves left, Falcon shows up to reinforce Flint's rescue team.
Because apparently the Himalayas are right next to Fort Leonard Wood. I'm not sure that's where G.I. Joe's base actually is located, by the way. I just love the fact that, so much of G.I. Joe lore is apparently located in the state of Missouri. like an honest-to-God fair bit of it.
Interesting. So. After reaching Cobra Law's outer walls, the Rawhides move to steal the Dreadnought swamp fires. Using the VTOLs to infiltrate Cobra Law, all 4 capture Joe figure waves from the clearance bin.
Woohoo! No one else dies! It's at this point the movie goes from a little nuts to flying completely off the rails, and a colossal firefight happens.
After dealing with the initial Cobra defense, the Joes make a run for Galabulus' palace. Galabulus responds by turning this movie from G.I. Joe to them, something even Jinx comments on. Galabulus goes full ham and orders the Joes' obliteration. Serpentor cries vengeance shall be his for some reason. Falcon, Jinx, and Sergeant Slaughter pair off against their respective antagonists. Fighting happens with Jinx doing her blindfold thing, kicking Pythonia off a ledge. Falcon is tossed about by Serpentor before being wrapped up by one of his Cobras, only to be saved by a fully mutated Cobra Commander. This permits Falcon to grab his 12 gauge and show that even with a shotgun, his marksmanship sucks.
Seriously, where is that barrel going? Center, left, right, center, right, left.
Good question. Sergeant Slaughter delivers a crushing overhead suplex on Nemesis Enforcer, followed by several flying elbows and a double axe handle. Finally, picking Enforcer up, he chokeslams him off the ravine, and for some reason, Nemesis Enforcer doesn't fly up. Just sucks that much?
Yeah, no one really liked him.
Yeah. The ref puts a 10 count, and Sergeant Slaughter is named the WWF Heavyweight Champion. Serpentor moves to strafe Falcon and finish him off, but Falcon seems to shed some of his suck long enough to pull some moves straight out of Miami Vice, entangling Serpentor's cape in the turbofan of his chariot and forcing him to crash into the ravine. Falcon then faces the final boss as Globulus dispenses with his lazy boy and moves in for the kill. Somewhere along the way, Falcon manages to grab the Time Worm and delivers a G-rated eye stab in Globulus's crab face thing. Taking advantage of the distraction, Falcon shuts down the BET, but it's too late. Globulus gloats at this victory and heads off to parts unknown.
And we never see him again.
Falcon fires up the BET and sets it to overload, melting Cobrala's ice caps and incinerating the spores. Everyone makes like a tree and gets out of there, as the BET goes off in the flash of nuclear glory. And as the smoke clears, the doctor calls over the radio that Duke has come back from the grave, because kids were traumatized by Optimus Prime's death. Everyone celebrates.
G.I. Joe!
Now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
So, Mrs. Arbiter, did you like G.I. Joe the movie?
Can you like a train wreck?
And this movie certainly is that. I don't dislike it. This is one of those seminal children's memory things for me.
It's a quintessential 80s kids movie.
It really is.
It is not meant to make sense.
No, it's meant to sell toys.
Yes. It reminds me heavily of Ren and Stimpy and a lot of the other comics we had growing up that our kids will sit there and stare at going, what am I watching? Where we didn't get the jokes then, but now that we get the jokes now, we still love it even more.
For me, one of the most bizarre things about this is that the movie was, as an adult, I now realize just how much the movie was impacted by Hasbro's other feature film projects, namely the Transformers movie and the Care Bears movie, and the My Little Pony movie, which all made it to theaters before G.I. Joe. And holy crap. Because first off, the most obvious thing was that this movie did not get a theatrical release. Instead, it went direct to video and was chopped up into a 5-episode miniseries for the television run. This had an interesting side effect, though, in its music production, which I really appreciate. Whereas the Transformers movie had a lot of original score that was made explicitly for it. Mm-hmm. The G.I. Joe movie, its soundtrack was largely the G.I. Joe television show's soundtrack.
That's actually nice to see that.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Now, there's a couple of points, too, where, interestingly enough, there are bits and bobs of the My Little Pony movie soundtrack in there as well. Specifically the score that surrounds the character Tyrek, I think his name was. The who is like this evil minotaur dude that wanted to suck up magic or some shit.
Yeah, I know that character too well.
So he but like the bits from the evil bits from the My Little Pony movie basically kind of became Pythona's and Nemesis Enforcer's themes.
Oh.
If I remember right, I know that there was generous amounts of My Little Pony soundtrack lifted and put into this movie.
But it blended well.
It really did. It really did.
It wasn't blended in an inappropriate way where you're shoving something in that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The plot was nonsensical. The characters that were not part of the TV show's regular cast was god-awful. But there's still something so incredibly charming about this movie that I can't lay my finger on. And maybe it's just the fact that, yeah, I can flip the brain switch off and just enjoy it so much.
Part of it is a little bit of just nostalgia.
Yeah, maybe that's it, too.
Part of it is you just kind of go back to that moment in childhood where you're just enjoying those Saturday morning cartoons.
Part of this... So, who was your favorite character in this movie?
Believe it or not, I actually really... On the Cobra side, it was Pythona. On the Joe side, it's Jinx. Well, Pythona is an interesting one because of the way she's introduced and brought in, saying, "I was there before, and I was imprinted into your mind as part of your being." It's kind of like, okay, you're just weird.
My longtime favorite on the Cobra side of things was the Dreadnoks. Zartan and his gang are basically my favorite thing in G.I. Joe. I love the fact that they're all Australian and speak with heavy Australian slang and are basically a bunch of idiots, except for Zartan and Zorana. And I assume Xandar, but Xandar doesn't speak in this movie. Like he has one line where he says, "You know us?" But that's just weird. Weird. And of course on the Joe side, I mean, I've been a sucker for Sergeant Slaughter's character, both in professional wrestling. I didn't like his Iraqi sympathizer heel turn from the 1990s. But his classic Sergeant Slaughter character, and then the Sergeant Slaughter return during the Monday Night Wars was always a fun thing, and it implants really well as a G.I. Joe character as well, so it's really, really cool as far as I'm concerned. I was a little disappointed that they didn't have Perry the Refrigerator Mason come to advise Big Lob, though. That would have been great. So yeah.
Well, I love Jinx because she's always trying to prove that she's not a jinx.
Yep, and then we never see her again.
Well, sometimes they just have those characters they need once, and...
Well, and part of that was, as I mentioned before, after this movie, there was, like, one more season that was already in production, and then production of the cartoon switched over to Deke, and was completely revamped from the ground up for a more aggressive early 1990s tone compared to the 1980s pseudo Falcon Islands style conflict thing. It was much more the post-Gulf War high-tech idea of what G.I. Joe should be. And that was where I started to get into it, and I started to really like it. So that was the only bad part to it was that they had this kind of pseudo rock rap theme instead of the classic 80s bit. So, and that there's just no beating that G.I. Joe, real American hero. There's just not. So, anyway, that's kind of my thing. Yeah, it's a train wreck of a movie. There's no doubt about it. But what happens when you see a train wreck? You stop and you watch.
You're curious.
and you're compelled. So, anyway, that's all I got to say about that. So, Mrs. Arbiter, what's our next movie gonna be?
what is our next movie going to be? I can't remember right now.
Well, there was a movie that we saw at Walmart in the $5 bin that had Danny Trejo on it and a mech suit. And we just picked it up because I don't know what else happens in this movie yet, but here's Danny Trejo and here's a mech suit behind him. This is going to be worth the $5. Mm-hmm. So we have Cartel 2044 as as our next movie, and we'll probably be pumping that out here in couple of months from when we put this one up. So anyway, that's all I gotta say about that. So, Mrs. Arbiter, any parting words?
G.I. Joe.
We'll be seeing you, kids.